One chilly evening in 1918, Frank Button, an English painter, ran into James Joyce, 36-year-old Irish writer who was at the time deep into working on his new novel, Ulysses. "How's the work going?" Button asked. "I've been writing all day," Joyce replied. "You must have gotten a lot done then." "Oh, just 2 sentences." 2 sentences? So you were, I suppose, searching for the right words all day? "No, not at all," said Joyce. "I had the words already. Today I was trying to put them in the right order." Hello and welcome to Read Less, a channel where we always try to put the words in the right order. My name is Armen Zakarian, and today we're talking about a book that is both celebrated and cursed. A book that has inspired libraries of commentary, countless imitations, and just as many abandoned reading attempts. That book is Ulysses by James Joyce, often described as the most difficult novel ever written. But is that true? Or is it just a story we keep repeating, one of many myths that have grown around this book? Most people who try to define Ulysses fall back on a familiar sentence. You might have heard some version of it. Ulysses is the most difficult novel in the history of world literature, written by James Joyce in the stream of consciousness style, describing a single day in the life of a Dubliner named Leopold Bloom, and retelling Homer's Odyssey in modern form. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? Except almost every part of that sentence is a myth. Today, we're going to look into 4 of them. Not to make Ulysses easier, but to make it closer. Well, we're all set? Almost. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And let's begin. Let's start with the biggest myth of all. Ulysses is the most difficult novel ever written. When I hear that, I always recall an old joke. John Lennon was once asked whether Ringo Starr was the best drummer in the world. To which Lennon, as the joke goes, replied, "Ringo isn't even the best drummer in the Beatles." And by that same logic, Ulysses isn't even the most difficult novel written by James Joyce himself. Of course, Ulysses is a hard one. It shifts styles from chapter to chapter, plays language, demands a lot of cultural and literary background, and often simply refuses to explain what's going on. It can feel like stepping into a conversation that started long before you entered the room, and will go on long after you leave. But at the same time, that conversation speaks to us more clearly than it is usually perceived. And the best proof is this. Joyce himself wrote a novel that's far more complex. That novel is Finnegans Wake, his final and least read work. It took Joyce almost 20 years to write it, and that book is a real nightmare. There are some readers who dedicate years of their lives to it. Entire reading groups form around it, spending decades trying to get through its pages. One such group, as far as I know, recently finished reading the book after 28 years. But these are exceptions, and Finnegans Wake still seems to be waiting for its reader. Just to give you a sense of what that experience is like, here's a single sentence from the novel, where the Badlery's partisans are still out to meth master Malchus migraines and the Verdons catapulting the cannibalistics out of the hoity-boys of Hoody Head. As you can probably hear, Finnegans Wake is an entirely different beast. It's a text where every word is a kind of self-contained metaphor, something to be decoded like a puzzle. So no, Ulysses is not the most difficult novel of all time. It's not even the most difficult novel James Joyce wrote. Which brings us to the second myth, that Ulysses is written entirely in the stream of consciousness. This is a tricky one, because yes, stream of consciousness is absolutely present in the book. But no, it's not the whole story. First, let's clear something up. Stream of consciousness is not a genre. It's a technique, and while Ulysses is famous for it, not all of it is written this way. Let's take a look at a passage from episode 4. The protagonist, Leopold Bloom, is reading a letter from his daughter. It's her birthday, she's far from home, he misses her. And we read, her first birthday away from home. Separation. Remember the summer morning she was born, running to knock up Mrs. Taunton in Denzile Street. Jolly old woman. Lot of babies she must have helped into the world. She knew from the first, poor little Rudy wouldn't leave. Well, God is good, sir. She knew at once. He would be 11 now, if he had lived. His vacant face stared pityingly at the postscript. Excuse bad writing. Hurry. What we see here is a clear flow of thoughts of the main character, moving forward not in neat sentences, but in fragments, images, and memories. This is stream of consciousness. But when at the end we get this, his vacant face stared pityingly at the postscript, then do you see that? We're outside of the hero's mind. Here we're in the narrator's voice now. But before we can even settle into that perspective, boom, we're back inside Bloom's head, seeing what he sees and reading what he reads. Excuse bad writing, hurry. So, you see, Joyce does not mark these transitions. He doesn't announce, now we're in the stream of consciousness, now we're not. It's quite the opposite. He blurs the line between narrator and the character, between the external and the internal. That's part of the magic and the challenge of the novel. However, narrator's voice is clearly present here, and we can't say the whole thing is stream of consciousness and nothing else. Moreover, some chapters, like episode 12 or episode 14, barely use stream of consciousness at all. They experiment with other styles and other techniques. And even more than that, Joyce doesn't use just one kind of stream of consciousness in the novel. The way one of the characters thinks in episode 4 is totally different from the way another does in episode 3, and both are completely different from the internal monologue in the final chapter. So yes, stream of consciousness is there, and it's essential. But Ulysses is not just one big river of thought. It's more like a literary symphony, full of different instruments, movements, and textures. That brings us to the third myth, one that's about the man at the center of this day in Dublin, Leopold Bloom. Is he really the center? Let's find out. The events of Ulysses formally do take place on a single day, June 16th, 1904. But the story itself isn't strictly confined to what happens on that day. First, there are lots of digressions, memories of the past, fantasies, and even uncanny episodes where characters fall into dreamlike versions of Dublin. Joyce clearly didn't care for the classical unities of time, place, and action. No. Nor Leopold Bloom is the sole protagonist. Ulysses has at least two candidates for that role. A part of Leopold Bloom is Stephen Dedalus. In fact, for some readers, Stephen is the real main character, and they argue that the Bloom's Day, June 16th, could just as well be called Stephen's Day. Now, let's mention another star, Molly Bloom, Bloom's wife, who narrates the famous last episode. You might remember the iconic photo of Marilyn Monroe reading Ulysses. If you zoom in, you'll notice she's reading that chapter. The monologue of Molly Bloom became so influential that entire stage productions have been built just around that single episode. So, yes, it's not fair to call Ulysses just Bloom's story. It's Stephen's story, it's Molly's story as well, and it's also filled with unforgettable secondary characters. Shadowy rivals, witty, mocking roommates, dreamy young women who are described as if they were writing a personal column in a turn-of-the-century women's magazine. Tricky school headmasters offering what we might call alternative facts. old sailors with their tattoos and stories of sharks and orthodox prayers. And finally, the mysterious man in the Macintosh. Of course, arguably the greatest enigma in all of Ulysses. Every reader wants to know who he is. Vladimir Nabokov had a theory, I have mine, but I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. The point is, Ulysses is not a novel about just one man, one place, or even one day. It's a puzzle of consciousness, characters, memories, and style. It's Dublin, but it's also every city, every life, and every story. It's Leopold Bloom, yes, but it's also every man. Finally, let's move on to the fourth and final myth about Ulysses. The idea that it's simply a retelling of the Odyssey. To me, calling Ulysses a retelling is misleading in the first place. Joyce doesn't retell Homer's epic. He uses it like scaffolding. A temporary structure, a frame, something that helps shape the novel but isn't its true content. Let's play a quick game. I'll describe a scene from Ulysses, and you try to guess which episode of the Odyssey Joyce is referring to. Not repeating, but retelling in his own way. So, our protagonist, Leopold Bloom, is caught in a heated argument in a Dublin pub. The conversation turns xenophobic, aggressive, and Bloom, a pacifist and an outsider in many ways, decides to leave. He jumps into a cab and drives off. One of the angry men, a self-proclaimed patriot, grabs a metal can and throws it after the cab. The can hits and rattles loudly on the cobblestones. Recognize the moment? This is a darkly comic echo of the Odyssey episode in the cave of the Cyclops. Odysseus escapes Polyphemus and sails away, but the Cyclops hurls stones after the ship in his powerless rage. Same structure here: conflict, escape, and a thrown object. Only now it's a pub in Dublin and the Cyclops throws an empty can, not a stone. You see, Joyce isn't trying to mirror Homer. He's mocking, reframing, layering it with irony. The Cyclops of Ulysses isn't a literal one-eyed giant, but a man with a one-eyed worldview. Narrow, nationalistic, full of ideological bluster. The point isn't heroism, but limited perspective. So, yes, Homer's epic is present in Ulysses, but not as a foundation to retell. It's more like an X-ray. You can see traces of the Odyssey episode by episode, but Joyce's main interest lies elsewhere. In language, in modern consciousness, in how we think, remember, fantasize, and live. Let's go back now to that grand sentence we started with, the one people repeat so often when they try to define Ulysses. Almost every part of it, in fact, turned out to be a myth. I believe we can now offer a better definition. Not final, not complete, but at least one closer to the truth. It goes like this. Ulysses is one of the most complex modernist novels of the 20th century. Written by James Joyce using a wide range of stylistic techniques, including several varieties of stream of consciousness, centered on the events of a single day in the life of Dublin and its citizens, yet constantly expanding into their pasts, memories, and inner worlds, structurally drawing on the Odyssey, and in some episodes reimagining Homer's poem. Now, that's much better. Because, let's be honest, you can't really love what you don't understand. You might admire it, fear it, or pretend to get it, but love needs a crack of light through the mystery. So, I hope this episode helped you find that light, helped bring Ulysses a few steps closer, made it feel less like a fortress and more like a door you might one day open. Not all at once, and perhaps not completely, but enough to begin. And maybe one day we'll even embark on this journey together. Thanks for being with us today. We appreciate your support. So don't forget to like and subscribe, maybe leave a comment and share your experience with Ulysses. And for now, call me Armin, and I'll see you next time.